This is Dr. Paul Thomlinson from Compass Health Network, and I'm doing a continuing series through which we seek to inspire hope and promote wellness by addressing key concerns arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, and to maybe help us all get through this crisis with some grace and humanity. I'm bringing some evidence-based psychology and other science-based understanding to many of the issues afflicting us these days. This is a two-part episode on grief and bereavement in the time of COVID. In part one, we heard about how the pandemic conditions have enormously complicated the grieving process by disrupting some of the most important things we depend on in normal times. Family togetherness, friends gathering around us, getting together for the important rituals of bereavement in our culture. So that's where we will pick it back up in this episode, continuing my Q&A with my longtime friend and former next-door neighbor, licensed therapist and co-founder of the Lost and Found Grief Center in Springfield, Missouri, Dr. Karen Scott. Karen has also recently published a couple of pieces in the Springfield News Leader on how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting bereavement and grief. So I was happy she agreed to generously give of her time to answer some questions and provide some guidance. Karen, you've written that our current inability to gather for the mourning rituals is complicating the already difficult grieving process. So the question is, why are such rituals important, and how is their absence likely to impact those who have lost someone during this time?
The funeral rituals that we have developed over time in our society serve a really important function. They provide the mechanism for people to know what to do. We know when someone has a visitation, this is the time you go and you greet the family and you share great memories with them. You share your condolences, but it gives an opportunity for that social support and for the good memories that families sometimes don't know that, and just by showing up, you're telling this family, you're important to me and this person was important to me. The funeral service itself is, again, an opportunity to acknowledge how important this person was in your life, and it's a send away. The two most lavish expenses in our society are for weddings and funerals. We equate the niceness of the service as a reflection of how much we love this person. So when you're forced to do a very abbreviated service and people don't attend, it doesn't feel like enough. And so it's not accomplishing the function of that ritual for families. The visitation and the funeral are also the first steps back out into a society for a grieving family. And so it provides a way for people to say to them, I'm so sorry for your loss, or here's that story. Absent that, they just show up sometime and run into people. And again, because we're so awkward about grief, people don't know how to bring it up. And so they often will say, I didn't really know what to say, so I didn't say anything. And saying nothing is never the right thing to do. But we need the structure of those rituals to do this thing right. It surprises me that when people don't have a memorial service immediately, often their friends don't reach out to them. But when the service occurs, they'll say, I'm so glad I have this opportunity because I wasn't really sure how to reach out to you. So clearly we need those functions of a service, and people simply are not able to have them. So everybody feels kind of empty at the end of that, and we have not appropriately honored the life of someone who was so important.
Oh, thank you, Karen. So, as you said, rituals are important. They provide predictability, kind of guideposts for behavior, how to help, etc. And without them, I think we can feel at a loss for how to respond. So, my last question for you is, are there any strategies you might recommend to help people deal with this terrible problem of not being able to gather together with others to lay their loved ones to rest?
There are things people can do, even if not given the opportunity to show up for a funeral service, and that is reach out via the telephone. We're a texting society. I guess a text is better than nothing, but hearing a human voice creates a positive physical response in people. It's not quite as good as what happens when they get a hug, but we know there's power in hearing the human voice. So call them and you express your condolences. Let them know how sorry you are. If you know stories about the person, then that's your time to share stories about the person. You say their name. Don't make that phone call about you and not, oh gosh, it's so awful. But I wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. I'm so sad it occurred in this situation when I can't come to a service, you can't have a service. There are still maybe some tangible things you can do, pick up groceries and drop it off on their doorstep, but that may not be something you want to do. So just that call. And then don't forget, keep the calls coming for the next several months, because people grieve longer than 2 weeks. They need to know they've not been forgotten and left alone in their grief. Another thing you can do is follow up with a note. You don't have to go buy a fancy sympathy card. Just write a note. I'm still thinking about you. I know this is hard. I can't get you off my mind. Or share, again, a special memory of that person and say their name in that note. So it just is simply reaching out. You need to do it more than once because grief lasts so much longer than people think. And again, our concern is that they're so isolated right now in their grief, and so they need lots of that outreach. Then if they do have a memorial service, once we're allowed to do that, show up, because what I'm hearing from some people is, I'm afraid if it's 2 months before we can do something, by then everyone will have forgotten and no one will come. And in fact, we may feel like, oh my gosh, I've got 6 services to attend. It's a small thing to do to show somebody that you really care about them. And it would not be too late to send a plant, some kind of acknowledgement, something that you normally would have done right now, but you can't because florists aren't delivering, those kinds of things. So people don't forget those acts of kindness and outreach. And it's simply, put it on your calendar so you don't forget, whatever it takes to remind yourself, because people are so very appreciative of acts of kindness.
Speaking of acts of kindness, thank you again, Karen, for sharing from your heart and from your experience and wisdom. We really do appreciate it. And to those of you who have lost someone or are in the process of losing someone during this very strange time, I hope you found something meaningful in these episodes to help you through. Always know, no matter how it feels, no matter what the physical distance between us, you're not alone. You are never alone.